Chris Pincher, the man whose groping scandal brought down Boris Johnson, comes back to haunt the Tories. Accused by Parliament of abuse of power, he faces sanctions that could trigger a fifth dangerous by-election for Rishi Sunak, with the general election already looming. It's also yet another scandal that exposes the toxic sexual culture within our Parliament. Also in News at 10 tonight. A life of luxury and multiple disguises. A look at how the Kremlin is discrediting Yevgeny Prigozhin, the man who tried to overthrow Putin. First, they were going to have a cage fight. Now they could have a legal battle. Elon Musk threatens to sue Mark Zuckerberg over potentially stealing Twitter's trade secrets. A great day for Brits at Wimbledon. First, an upset for Liam Brodie, then victory too for Katie Boulter, whilst Sir Andy Murray fights once again under the lights of centre court. And the workers who were building a school but dug up a hoard of oversized stone implements 300,000 years old.
This is ITV News at 10 with Rageh Omaar.
Good evening. Chris Pincher is the little-known former whip whose own downfall has already taken one Prime Minister with him. That was Boris Johnson a year ago this week. But he's come back to haunt another Tory Prime Minister because now Rishi Sunak is having to deal with the potentially damaging fallout from a report that found Mr. Pincher had sexually assaulted two men. It called what he had done an abuse of power that had damaged the reputation of Parliament and called for him to be suspended from Parliament for 8 weeks. Not only does that tarnish the Conservatives' image, it means Mr. Sunak could be facing as many as 5 uncomfortable by-elections.
1 year ago tomorrow, Boris Johnson resigned as Prime Minister, pushed out in part over allegations about his Deputy Chief Whip, Chris Pincher.
Pincher by name, Pincher by nature. Now, has the Prime Minister ever said words to that effect?
I'm not going to trivialise what happened.
MPs have spent 12 months investigating those allegations and today said Chris Pincher should be suspended from Parliament for 8 weeks.
He shouldn't still be an MP, and the Conservative Party are a disgrace for allowing it to continue.
Opposition parties say he should resign immediately.
They all tried to defend it, and it's not defendable, and they need to do more about it.
The report centres on events at the Carlton Private Members Club last June, where a heavily intoxicated Chris Pincher is accused of groping two men. MPs said his behaviour was unwanted, upsetting and deeply inappropriate and amounted to an abuse of power. Mr. Pincher says he was unable to recall the events and was today reflecting on the report's findings. What happened here a year ago ultimately led to the resignation of Boris Johnson, but the political consequences could yet cause problems for the current Prime Minister. If Chris Pincher is suspended from Parliament, it will be voters here in Tamworth who decide whether to force him out as their MP.
If he has done that, then I hope he actually gets punished for it properly.
He represents us as a community, and I feel like he's really let Tamworth down.
With all the other MPs that seem to be in trouble in all sorts of ways, I don't think he's any different from the rest of them.
And if Chris Pincher is forced out, it would mean a tricky by-election for Rishi Sunak.
It's a fantastically bad time to be facing by-elections if you're Rishi Sunak. So the polls are stabilising with a Labour lead of 18 to 20 points. It's a very bad time. That's much worse than they were going into local elections.
5 MPs have already stood down in this Parliament following accusations of sexual wrongdoing. Today there were further calls to root out bad behaviour.
There's a cultural issue. There has been for a long time, and Parliament, the political parties, all need to come together to resolve this, and quickly.
Chris Pincher has 10 days to appeal the report before all MPs vote on his suspension.
Well, what makes a likely 5 by-elections tricky for the Prime Minister isn't just the potential for several embarrassing results. It is that they may be inflicted by different parties in very different parts of the country. First, in Uxbridge and South Ruislip, and Selby and Ainsty, where Labour are the main challenger, as well as Somerton and Frome, where the Liberal Democrats are likely to have the best chance of taking it. We're also likely to see a by-election in mid-Bedfordshire at some point where the Lib Dems will put up a strong fight, and potentially in Tamworth too, where Labour will fancy their chances. Harry is here. Harry, these are all by-elections, very different, very risky for Rishi Sunak, and albeit before a looming general election.
Yeah, it's a really tough summer ahead for the Prime Minister. Rishi Sunak, I think, has desperately tried to draw a line in the sand from the chaos that his party went through last year and tried to distance himself from that, distance himself from what critics would say was sleaze within his party. He came in on day one, he promised to bring integrity, professionalism, accountability to government. But look, he's feeling the aftershocks of what happened last year, and he got another one today with the resignation of Chris Pincher and this potential, the report into Chris Pincher and this potential looming by-election. 5 by-elections, potentially, 3 before the summer, 2 maybe later in the year. Tough for Rishi Sunak, given his party's poll ratings, given the state of the economy, inflation higher than what he would want it to be, but also really tough because of where they are in the country and the fact that he's defending these seats not just against Labour, but against the Liberal Democrats as well. And in some cases, all 3 parties will be competing for those seats. So, look, this is a massive test, a massive political test for Rishi Sunak at a time he could really do without it.
All against a bad background. Thank you very much indeed, Harry. When the leader of the attempted one-day mutiny against President Putin went unpunished, part of the deal was that Yevgeny Prigozhin agreed to exile in Belarus. Well, it seems he's not there now, according to the president of Belarus, a close ally of Putin. Meanwhile, in Russia, where Prigozhin is thought to be, the media have been trying to discredit him by showing pictures of his mansion there, filled with stacks of gold bars, cash and, apparently, several wigs.
When he was last seen in public, Yevgeny Prigozhin was being cheered in Rostov, looking like a man of the people. That makes him a threat to Vladimir Putin, who, wary of the Wagner commander's legitimacy in the eyes of many Russians, treated him magnanimously in the immediate aftermath of his aborted coup. But now Russian state media has turned on Prigozhin, publishing pictures they said were from inside his St. Petersburg mansion, showing his opulent lifestyle. Russian television has discredited him further by reporting a security forces raid on Wagner offices in the city. These seized photos purportedly show him in a range of disguises while abroad. Prigozhin's current whereabouts are a mystery. Under the terms of the deal ending the mutiny, he's meant to be in Belarus, but that country's leader claims he's actually in Russia. He's in St. Petersburg, he said. He might travel to Moscow or he might be elsewhere, but he's not on Belarus territory. Prigozhin has been an outspoken critic of the Russian Defense Ministry's conduct of the war in Ukraine, and early today residents of Lviv became the latest Ukrainians to learn that those brutal tactics remain unchanged. 2 missiles slammed into an apartment building, killing at least 5 people, injuring dozens more. After a similar strike killing civilians in a Kramatorsk restaurant last week, the Kremlin spokesman said Russia only attacked military-linked targets. But the children's toys we found in the wreckage in Lviv today yet again exposed that claim to be an outright lie. When Vladimir Putin launched his special military operation, his stated aim was to bring the Ukrainian people into the fold. But attacks like this just drive the wedge between Ukraine and Russia deeper and deeper. And today, the Kremlin's war aims are totally unclear. Russia is waging a war it's not winning. Unable to defeat the Ukrainian army, it keeps turning on the Ukrainian people, the softest of targets. John Irvine, News at 10, Lviv.
A children's end of summer term party on the grass outside their classroom ended in death and terrible injuries this morning, completely out of the blue. For some as yet inexplicable reason, a gold-coloured Land Rover driving along a quiet road near Wimbledon Common crashed through the fence of a girls' prep school and into the children. One, an 8-year-old girl, died from her injuries. Others ended up in hospital. The driver, a woman in her 40s, was arrested on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving.
This primary school garden had been where pupils and teachers were having an end-of-term party this morning. Then, just before 10 o'clock, a car crashed through the wooden fencing and straight through the group. Only the building stopped its path.
I saw a teacher come in and she was in the playground with the children, just happened to turn around and was walking in when the car came through, so she escaped. But she saw the carnage that it created and she was obviously very upset.
I saw a lot of distraught parents rushing out. I don't necessarily know which ones may have been the parents of children who were struck in the incident or not, but there were certain relieved faces and certain very distraught and panicked faces.
The emergency service response included uniformed and plainclothes police officers, the fire service, air ambulance and paramedics, who treated 16 people here and took 10 of them to hospital. The young ages of those involved today moved even those whose job requires them to face danger and distress.
Our officers, along with colleagues from other emergency services, provided first aid to a number of people who had been injured. Very sadly, one of the children, an 8-year-old girl, died at the scene. Our thoughts are with her family at this incredibly difficult time.
The private school for girls aged 4 to 11 years old is on a quiet back road nestled between Wimbledon Common and 2 golf courses. The school has said it's aware of the significant impact this dreadful event will have on its pupils and families.
You'll perhaps appreciate that the school community is profoundly affected by this tragedy, and at the moment we're really not in a position to make any further comment about it.
Officers have arrested the driver of the car, a woman in her 40s, on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving. The police investigation is focusing on what caused the car to leave the road, smash through the fence and onto school grounds. But detectives have already confirmed that this is not terror-related. Tonight, the police cordon has been lifted as the first flowers and toys have been laid. Tributes to an 8-year-old girl who was killed as she celebrated the last day of the school term. Ellie Pitt, News at 10, Wimbledon.
A gangland thug has been found guilty of murdering beautician Ellie Edwards in a Merseyside pub on Christmas Eve. She was shot dead while celebrating with friends by Connor Chapman. He and an accomplice will be sentenced tomorrow. Chapman had been lying in wait in the pub's car park for 2 rival gangsters to open fire with a submachine gun. Ellie's father called him a coward.
I've had my eyes on him for 4 weeks, 3 weeks, 4, however long it's been, and he has not looked at me once because he's a coward, and that's exactly what he is. And I couldn't care less about him. I'll never ever mention his name, and I hope he rots in hell.
Chapman was arrested in a Tesco supermarket a fortnight after the shooting. The judge is considering whether to give him a whole life sentence. The failures over the racist murder of Stephen Lawrence have haunted London's Metropolitan Police for 30 years. Now, the 4 officers, all retired, who were tasked with finding the killers immediately after Stephen's murder, will not face any criminal charges because they ran a failed investigation. Stephen's mother, Baroness Lawrence, called the decision a disgrace, saying hope had been in vain. Now, the Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer announced the last of his party's 5 missions, the one he considers most personal, that he hopes will take his party to government at the next election. The Prime Minister has also adopted a 5-pledge approach, but Sir Keir has already set out the aim of the highest economic growth among G7 countries, of making Britain a clean energy superpower, delivering a health service fit for the future and safer streets by halving serious violent crime. And last but not in the least, Sir Keir's book is Ending Barriers to Opportunity for Children, what he calls breaking the class ceiling.
Labour's leader on the last of his 5 missions, today to overhaul schools to help those with least rise up the ladder of success as he did.
I see this mission as our core purpose and my personal cause. To fight at every stage for every child the pernicious idea that background equals destiny.
Because Starmer says he's one of the lucky ones.
And I'm not pleading poverty, not at all. To go from an ordinary working class background to leading the Crown Prosecution Service and now the Labour Party, I feel both privileged and proud.
Partly to honour his toolmaker dad, he wants to end the second-class status of vocational skills.
He felt looked down on, disrespected. It chipped away at his esteem.
He wants the curriculum broadened to include more creative, artistic subjects, sport and communication skills, help, especially aimed at disadvantaged young people with speaking, what's called oracy.
Typically, children who experience an oracy education make on average 6 months additional progress compared to children who didn't. There's also a connection to children's confidence, their employability and their well-being.
So what's missing?
Why isn't there more of a commitment to free school meals? And why isn't there more of a commitment to eradicate poverty?
You know, we are constrained by the money available and the targeting that is available as well.
Level with the British people, you can't get the growth rate up quickly, so it's going to be years till, if you win the election, you can fund public services in the way that people want.
We do need growth, and that's why the first mission I set out was about how we grow the economy, how we raise living standards.
But it will take years.
The sooner we get the chance to start, the better.
Give us one thing that's going to change the growth rate in a year or two.
Well, look, many of the things that we've put on the table, the investment that we will put in, it's not all about money. We need reform. If you look at the health service, if you look at education.
You seem to be relying on the government to lose the election. You need, surely, some would say, to be more positive.
I've just set out 5 missions over the course of the last few months, setting out in terms...
But lacking detail. What
an incoming Labour government hopes to achieve in the next 5 to 10 years if we're privileged. I think that's actually a more detail than most opposition leaders gave at this stage outside of an election.
Which could be little more than a year away, so that argument won't cut it much longer. Robert Peston in the Medway for News at 10.
Now, the rivalry between tech billionaires Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk could be heading for the courts now. Mr. Musk, the owner of Twitter, of course, has sent the Facebook founder a sternly worded letter threatening to sue Mr. Zuckerberg over his new Twitter lookalike social media site Threads, to Robert in the United States. A growing row between these two men who were threatening a cage fight, but now might end up in court.
Yeah, as you say, I mean, the animosity, the rivalry between these two Silicon Valley titans is already legendary. As you say, last month there was even talk of them having their confrontation involving actual cage fight. But now it seems that confrontation will take place not in the ring, but rather in the courtroom. This new social media platform launched by Instagram, by Meta, is known as Threads. It's gained incredible traction already, more than 30 million followers in its opening 24 hours, and it's strikingly similar to its essential rival Twitter, and therefore Elon Musk has fired back, accusing Meta and Zuckerberg of intellectual property theft, saying and tweeting out that competition is fine and cheating is not. So it does seem like it's heading for a legal showdown. And Rageh, this isn't just about ego. This is about who owns, who curates, really the preeminent global digital platform. And it does seem almost certainly now to become Silicon Valley's latest epic legal fight.
We'll follow it closely. Thanks, Robert, in Washington. Now, it's been a long wait for the main event at Wimbledon today, for fans of British tennis anyway. Sir Andy Murray has been rolling back the years in his second-round match against the fifth-seeded Stefanos Tsitsipas. But there was plenty to cheer in the meantime. Britain's Liam Brodie showed Sir Andy the way, beating the fourth-seed Casper Ruud in the biggest upset of the tournament so far. Katie Boulter won her match too. Now she faces defending champion Elena Rybakina.
After 3 days of disruption, a full programme of play at last, and Andy Murray topping the bill as the Brits took to the courts.
I'm really looking forward to Murray Tsitsipas. Win, 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 win.
Liam Brodie, ranked 142 in the world, was first up on centre court, facing fourth seed Casper Ruud. After taking the first set 6-4, Brodie seemed to be struggling. He lost the second and third sets, but grass is not Ruud's natural environment. In fact, he has an allergy to it. And with the roar of the crowd behind him, Brodie was buoyed, pulling out some stunning shots to level before decimating Ruud 6-love in the fifth to take the match and head through to the third round.
That is a dream fifth set.
Meanwhile, Katie Boulter, Britain's only woman left in the singles draw, reached the third round for a second year in a row. She won the first set against Victoria Tomova in just 28 minutes.
6-love set for Katie Boulter.
After losing the second, the British number one piled the pressure on the Bulgarian to secure her victory.
She's done it.
But the night had already started to draw in, and so did the roof on centre court, before the match everyone had been waiting for. Andy Murray against fifth seed Stefanos Tsitsipas. Murray managing to match the power of the Greek, but with centre court on the edge of their seats, he lost the first set after it went to a tie-break.
And he has it, Tsitsipas.
Going into the second set, Murray's performance saw moments of perfection, peppered with outbursts of frustration, as he responded to the power of the Tsitsipas serve. Yet again, going to a tie-break, centre court falling silent at set point. And then exploding in celebration as Murray claimed the second set. Well, that Murray magic came out right at the very start of the third set. For the first time after over 2 hours of play, Murray broke Tsitsipas and the centre court crowd went absolutely wild. He has since held serve. Now, this is a battle of age against experience. Murray is taking every ounce of energy he can from that crowd tonight. They can play until 11, but it looks like this is going to be an epic encounter which will have to carry over to tomorrow, which incidentally is exactly 10 years since Murray first became Wimbledon champion.
Amazing. We'll be watching closely. Thanks so much. Now, a drought in Spain is being made worse in the fruit and veg growing areas of the south by the huge volumes of water needed to stock our supermarket shelves. It's a prime area for the growing of premium produce like mangoes and avocados. Between last October and May, rainfall in Spain was 28% lower than expected, and April was the driest it's been since records began in 1961, with only a fifth of the expected rainfall. And that helps explain why the country's reservoirs are at 47% of their capacity.
As the morning sun streams through the ancient oak forests of southern Spain, it is feeding time for the region's celebrated Pata Negra pigs. They're raised to roam free on a diet of acorns that gives the best Spanish ham, jamón ibérico, its unique flavour. But this year the drought here has become so severe that there will be few acorns. Farmer Miguel Torralbo must buy in expensive food to cope with a third year of almost zero rain.
Yo tengo ya 63 años.
I'm 63 years old, he tells me, and I've never seen anything like this.
How afraid are you that this is the future, that this is the world we've created?
Bueno, la preocupación es muchísima por...
It's a huge worry. If it goes on, it'll be the end of our business. 1 year, 2 years, but 3 years, that's too much.
No creo.
The pigs would normally be eating and rooting among hundreds of acres of trees in grasses a foot high or more. And as for the acorns that should fatten the pigs in the autumn, unless it rains, these will not grow big enough.
Claro, si no llueve, no crecen.
That's right. Without rain, they won't grow. They'll stay as they are and eventually dry out.
Cada día se irían perdiendo bellotas.
It's not just a lack of food for these animals, there's very little for them to drink either. Where I'm walking is normally a running stream, even in high summer, but not this year. All that's left now is a couple of puddles. Across southern Spain, it's the same story. Reservoirs like this one so low as to be effectively empty. Sparse rainfall, a changing climate, and huge demands for water are, say environmentalists, sucking every drop from this landscape. The economic model here for the last few decades has been build new houses, plant new trees, grow new crops. Has this got to stop?
We must look for a new possibility to economic, not only the tourism, not only the trees, not only the crop for without water, because the limit from here is the water.
But new crops keep fueling demand. Thousands of acres of avocados and mangoes where once there was scrubland. So much that they call it Europe's supermarket. And still new trees are being planted, more land taken over. New irrigation systems installed to drip water onto the saplings. Avocado farmer Alvaro Sedano has invested in ultra-modern computer-controlled irrigation systems. But given what's happening to the climate, something far more radical is needed, either to desalinate seawater or recycle the millions of gallons used domestically.
In Singapore, the 90% of the water, they recycle.
They recycle 90% in Singapore.
Andalusia, Málaga, Costa del Sol, we consume so much water for the tourist places. So that water could have a second life in the agriculture.
That's the choice now, either lose millions of acres of production or invest massively because rain alone is no longer going to be enough. James Mates, News at 10, southern Spain.
Not for the first time in this Ashes series, England's chances of winning a test hang in the balance at the end of day one, thanks in part to some fast bowling from England's Mark Wood. He took 5 wickets for 34, including that of Usman Khawaja. The Australian batter Mitch Marsh celebrated his test comeback with a century. Australia ended 263 all out. England's batters did not look very convincing, though. Ben Duckett was out for 2. They will pick up tomorrow on 68 for 3. Finally, archaeologists are excited and a little puzzled by a hoard of stone implements from the Ice Age 300,000 years ago in Kent. Excited because the sheer number, 800 in all. Puzzled because some hand axes for cutting up dead animals for their meat are almost too big to handle.
There are archaeological digs, and then there are excavations like this one. What they found here amid foundations for a new school in Kent, 250,000 years old. But even then, size mattered.
We think these were probably used as kind of cutting tools, maybe butchering animals, cutting up meat, that kind of thing. Finding a hand axe, finding material from this age is amazing, whatever size it is. I mean, it's a really amazing thing. But yeah, the size of these hand axes, especially the biggest one, is, I've never seen a hand axe that big.
Unlike the archaeologists painstakingly sifting through 800 items here at a Brighton laboratory, the Neanderthals wouldn't have had time on their side to dream big.
There would have been a daily thing of trying to get food, gather food, hunt animals. There was also some pretty dangerous animals living around. You've got tigers, would have been wolves.
A world so different, it makes this work a leap into the largely unknown.
Steve, how does it feel to be handling stuff that's so old? At times, Britain wasn't even an island when it was made.
It's just incredible. Knowing that these were made by different species of human it's just quite incredible holding them, and it's quite an honour.
An honour and an insight into a long-gone type of human.
The largest hand axe is too fragile to pick up, but even this one gives you a sense of something so big it's almost impractical. And that raises the very 21st century question of whether status symbols were a thing, even back in Neanderthal times.
It is kind of strange. This isn't something that happened by accident. It's such an outlier. So they were definitely trying to show something, whether it was them as an individual trying to demonstrate how strong, how skillful they were, or maybe it was part of a group trying to demonstrate something to another group. At the moment, we don't know.
Power, even
power, maybe.
Power and the Paleolithic period. That means old stones to you and me, but the secrets they contain are as compelling as they're complex. Rachel Younger, News at 10, Brighton.
And that's it for tonight. Thanks for watching. Good night.